Welcome to Razzball Radio on the Fantasy Sports Network for Friday, August the 1st. I'm your host, Nick Capozzi, and we've got another great guest. He joined us yesterday. He's back for more today. It is Mr. Corey Parson, the morning show producer at Roto Experts in the morning on Sirius XM Fantasy. Corey, thanks for joining us 2 days in a row. Really appreciate it. Yesterday, we broke down quarterbacks and tight ends, Corey's take versus their expert consensus rankings. Today we're going to look at running backs and wide receivers. So let's start today with running backs. Let's talk about a couple guys you're high on. One, and I think I'm going to disagree with you here on this one, but right now DeMarco Murray is going as the 7th running back off the board. I like the offense. We talked yesterday about Scott Linehan being there. My issue is that this guy, he's always breaking down. So you tell me why DeMarco Murray should be higher than number 7.
Look at the way he ran towards the end of the season last year. Listen, the Dallas Cowboys, like we spoke about yesterday, always say that they're going to commit to running the football, but they never really do.
Right.
But DeMarco Murray is not a volume running back. He's going to catch you 50 balls. He can run for 1,300 yards. Now, everything about Murray says, oh, well, the injuries. This is fantasy football. Any player can get hurt. You want to hit a home run, you got to take those risks, those gambles. This is the year of DeMarco Murray to be one of the best running backs in fantasy football. The yards per carry will be over 5. Attached to a good offense, going touchdowns, not an issue for him no more. Everything about Murray I love except the durability, but I'm willing to take a gamble on him just because of last year down the stretch, he may have been the best running back in fantasy football outside of Ryan Matthews, so there that goes.
Right. Okay, well, no, that's a good argument. You know what? I like your point about taking risks, and you're right. You know what? I tend to play more safe, especially in the first 2 rounds, because you can't win your league in the first 2 rounds, but you can lose it. But you know what? You make a good point. I think that offense could obviously have a big year, so DeMarco Murray, like the upside there. Here's a guy I'm down on. Love your take on Marshawn Lynch. Obviously, he's holding out of camp, which is not good news. B, he's got Kristen Michael's the buzzy name right now, but actually I was listening to Scott Angle, the king, on the Roto Experts in the morning on Sirius XM the other day, and he brought up a good argument about Robert Turbin. Robert Turbin is more ready to play, not as skilled, obviously, as Michael, but more polished as a runner. So Marshawn Lynch actually has 2 guys nipping at his heels. Lots of tread on those tires. What's your take on Mr. Lynch up in Seattle?
It's not going to happen for me this year. When all the news about a player in the offseason is negative, I'm immediately dropping him down my draft boards. I mean, not only the ability in the PPR, don't get me wrong, he's excellent, but like you said, the tread on the tire is starting to wind down a little bit. And they got the contract situation. They could just run him into the ground, beat him up, batter him up, not even care because he's not coming back with them next season. He's got 2 young studs behind him. He doesn't catch passes, like I said, in the PPR, so it doesn't help you with that point. All Marshawn Lynch about is his volume and touchdowns. So I'd rather go with a different running back. I don't necessarily like to draft volume runners.
Okay, in Seattle then, let's say you're not picking Lynch. Which of the 2 running backs would you rather have this year backing him up, Turbin or Michael?
That's going to be a tough call right there because right now that's a position battle that everybody in fantasy football industry has their eyes on. Christine Michael is known around the industry as the big-time known talent. But you know what? Roger Turbin has looked very good so far this season in training camp, and he's actually pushing to get most of those touches or even split carries with Lynch if Lynch does end up showing up at some time. Another thing about Lynch, when players hold out of camp, when they do show up, they immediately get injured because they're not warmed up. So another reason to stay away from Lynch and look at both of his backups, Turbin and Michael. Michael's the one that gets drafted, but Turbin is the one real sneaky pick later on, late in drafts that could actually end up being one of your steals on draft day.
There you go. Take note of that. Okay, another player that I want to talk about, and I just acquired him in a dynasty league. It was because it wasn't a guy I love, but I had a willing trading partner. I want your take on Le'Veon Bell because everyone's kind of high on him this year. He was good last year. He's going to get the goal line touches, but is Pittsburgh's offense good enough this year that he's going to be valuable? Right now, he is the number 10 running back in the expert consensus rankings.
Yeah, I like what he does as a fantasy running back. He's attached to an offense up the ball, up and down the field pretty well, especially when he came in last year. You really saw that Pittsburgh offense take off. They're going to see some more no huddle from them this year. That should give him some chance in the screen games. He caught over 50 passes last season. Or was it 40-something passes? You got to check that on me. Check that for me. But he caught a ton of passes last season in the games he did play. Expect him to do the same thing this year. He showed excellent durability, too. That's one of the things I like about Bell. Pittsburgh's offense, touchdowns, pass catching, 3-down running back. I'm not worried about Blunt at all. Blunt is a backup. So go ahead and draft Le'Veon Bell. Second round, you get a chance to snag up Le'Veon Bell, go for it.
All right, number 16 running back right now is C.J. Spiller. Obviously, I love the upside. I actually had him as the number 2 running back overall last year. This guy's let me down a couple times. I think Fred Jackson's a lot older than people realize because he got into the NFL late. I'm concerned about Bryce Brown a little bit, but you tell me. 16 overall or 16 running back off the board. CJ Spiller. What are your thoughts?
Phenomenal talent. Doesn't take a whole lot for him to get it done. Splitting him out wide some this year so far in camp, so that could be another element to his game. The Buffalo Bills run the football more than just about any other team in the National Football League because the passing game stinks. Spiller, listen, he can take it to the house on any given play. That's how dynamic, athletic the talent is right now. People are down on him because he hurt their feelings last year. Fantasy owners, leave your feelings out of it. C.J. Spiller did not want to have a bad season to ruin your team. He had a bad season because he was dealing with nagging injuries all year long. A fresh Spiller going into a contract year, sky's the limit.
All right, here's a guy I don't know how to rank because I don't know if he was that good as a rookie or that bad as a sophomore. Doug Martin, 14th running back off the board right now, Tampa Bay Bucks.
Yeah, it looks like a volume running back. Even last year when he was out there playing, he tended to struggle at times until he got injured. Then you saw guys like Bobby Rainey coming in and do a bang-up job. I think he's another, like I said, I don't trust volume running backs because when those fall behind in games, that volume starts to go away. I mean, you do like the three-down back. I don't think he's a three-down back this season. I do think that some of the backups, Sims and Rainey, get involved more in the offense. So I think you lose that luster to him. Also, the fact that I just don't know if Doug Martin is just that good. Everybody went and drafted him high last year. I laid off of Martin last season because I just didn't. His rookie season, he had a couple of big games to balloon those numbers. Don't get me wrong, he's an excellent player, like what he can do, but not the way that system is. I think they're going to share that workload. Doug Martin's not going to be on none of my fantasy teams.
All right. Of course, Corey and I are going to meet when we meet in person for the first time when we come through New York on Razzball's 32 and 32 and 32, powered by the Fantasy Sports Network. We're coming through New York City at Duke's, the Murray Hill location, on August 21st, Thursday night, 7 p.m. You want to get on the guest list, email me, nick@razzball.com. You are coming out to that, right, Mr. Parson?
Yeah, I'll be out there. You know, I'll throw a couple back with you. I can always do a good chicken wing.
You know what? Actually, it's going to be the who's who of fantasy. There are a lot of experts coming out. I know Mike Cardano's already confirmed. Lenny Melnick's coming out. I know you're going to drag out those morning show guys. Nando Rufino's coming, so that's going to be a big one. Come hang out with us. All the info is at razzballtour.com. Okay, we're going to go to break. When we come back, we will talk wide receivers with Corey Parson, morning show producer, Roto Experts in the Morning, Sirius XM. Boy, I'm dropping a lot of show names now because I still got to get in. You're watching Razzball Radio on the Fantasy Sports Network.
I was never one for traditional dating, which is why I like to meet guys on ArrangementFinders.com. Arrangement Finders puts a twist on dating that works so well, they guarantee you'll find a girl. That's right, guarantee. Sounds too good to be true? Check out these girls on ArrangementFinders.com who are looking to date. She's hot. She's hot. Okay, her, not so much. Anyway, it's free to join, so you've got nothing to lose. Go to Arrangement Finders and meet girls like me who know what you really want.
Welcome back to Razzball Radio on the Fantasy Sports Network. Still hanging out with Corey Parson. We are going over expert consensus rankings and whether or not Corey agrees with them. Let's talk number 5, wide receiver Julio Jones. I think he's got the talent to maybe be number 1, but he was banged up a little bit as a rookie and obviously missed a lot of time last year. Julio Jones, what's your take?
Oh, I love Julio Jones. I'm a big Julio Jones fan. Look at the pace he was on last season. That guy might have had 170 catches last year. I mean, I think things broke down in Atlanta, but Julio Jones is one of the rare, true talents in the NFL. Has a good chemistry with Matt Ryan, an offense that like to throw the football all over the field, has protection across the other side on Roddy White, deep threat, possession receiver, total package. If you're worried about the injury, I say don't worry right now. He's looked great in camp.
Okay, well, listen, it's tough to argue with that. Here's a guy that I know you like a lot. Number 8 wide receiver off the board right now is Antonio Brown of Pittsburgh. I can't have him that high just because I'm still not sold on Pittsburgh's offense this year, but I know you like Antonio Brown. Tell me why.
Oh, yeah, I love Antonio Brown. I'm sitting up talking about Antonio Brown. I'm talking about a child of mine. Now, let me tell you, Antonio Brown is the most underrated player in fantasy football. He's going to catch 100 passes. He's going to score touchdowns. Antonio Brown is great. And you know why? Because he plays for Todd Haley. Players hate Todd Haley, but the wide receivers that come up under Todd Haley are excellent. Nobody but Wheaton on the other side of him in that offense. Another big year is on the horizon for Antonio Brown. You're going to see a lot of good things. Listen, Antonio Brown, Nick, when I tell you this, Antonio Brown should be a first-round draft pick in PPR leagues. You're making a mistake if you don't snag Antonio Brown in the first round.
All right. Yesterday, you gave us a big one, said Julius Thomas could be the #1 tight end. I'm also going to write down Antonio Brown should be a first-rounder in PPR. Well, let's see how that works out during the season. Okay, another wide receiver, Victor Cruz. Don't like him. Take out those 3 touchdowns in the first game last year. He had 1, count them, 1 touchdown rest of season. Victor Cruz, 15th wide receiver. Talk to me.
You know what? Learning a new offensive scheme doesn't listen. No matter what whatever Hakeem Nicks was, there was protection on the outside with Hakeem Nicks.
Yes.
Allow Victor Cruz to work the middle of the field, get a lot of looks, get a lot of touches. But you got a new system coming in. The Giants' offense hasn't looked that well so far in training camp. Don't get me wrong. I understand it's early, but Cruz is a guy I'm staying away from this season. All the signs point to a down year from Victor Cruz, mainly because the offense of the New York Giants seem to be lagging, and they're going to have to take some time to learn that new system.
Okay. Larry Fitzgerald in Arizona, 16th wide receiver off the board right now. Listen, there's a lot of talk here because, of course, I'm based in Phoenix. A lot of talk on local sports radio that Michael Floyd might surpass him and be the #1 guy there this year. What are your thoughts on Larry Fitzgerald?
No, I think it's time to close up shop. I don't like players where, veteran players going into. Well, Fitzgerald's not going into a walk year, but he's going to be a cap casualty next season. Trust me, it's a big number coming towards the end of the season. His team is not willing to commit to him for a contract extension. Why should you commit to him on your fantasy team? And then right across the way, you got a young up-and-coming stud wide receiver in Michael Floyd. Listen, I'm not saying that Fitz is not going to put up those numbers still that you want, but Michael Floyd is a better option than Larry Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald will not be on any of my fantasy teams this year.
All right, you said that earlier Antonio Brown is like a child of yours. Is Michael Crabtree a kid or a cousin or a neighbor? I mean, how much do you love Michael Crabtree? Because I know you're high on him.
Me and Crabtree have a love-hate relationship. I was a big fan at first, then I couldn't stand him. I'm on the Michael Crabtree bandwagon once again. Boy, I tell you what, the things that him and Colin Kaepernick can do together is going to be very special. They get a chance to play 16 games. In the 10 games they've played so far this season, the numbers have been phenomenal. Look for Crabtree to catch 100 balls this season and double-digit touchdowns. This is a walk year for Crabtree, playing for a big contract. He gives you 16 games, going to finish as a wide receiver 1.
All right. Listen, I want to get to a couple more guys, but real quick, how did you get up to working to being the producer of the morning show? Did you start off in regular radio and moved over to Sirius? Because I know a lot of people ask me, Nick, how'd you do this? And I said, well, I sold my house to put it all together. But how did you get started in the business?
Nah, I always had a dream and passion to work in radio, so I pursued the radio career, and things were going well, bouncing around, doing some sports talk radio, producing some shows, getting to learn the industry, and behind the scenes, then I was approached with this idea of working on the Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio channel, and I was like, you know what, this is interesting. Big fantasy football fan, so been doing it for about 4 or 5 years now. Definitely has taken off, and looking forward to helping fantasy owners win championships from here on out.
So obviously, fantasy football is huge. Fantasy baseball is probably #2. It's not close. It's it's interesting, but it's not close. What about basketball and hockey? How big is that?
What? No, I think daily fantasy basketball, and if it hasn't already, it's definitely going to replace season-long fantasy basketball. Daily fantasy basketball is a very fun, entertaining game. I've never set a hockey fantasy lineup before. And as far as baseball goes, I hate to say it because we got a lot of fantasy baseball players watching this program now, but it's a dying game.
Oh man, come on! I am going to disagree with you on that.
I know you hate that. And everybody hates to hear that, but I tell the baseball guys all the time, football is driving the bus.
Yeah, well, listen, there's no question about that. Listen, 40 million people in North America play fantasy. 3/4 of them play football. Next is baseball with 1/4 of them. So yeah. Football, there is no question, is king. But whatever games people are playing, we will be here to cover it on Razzball Radio. Okay, let me shoot a couple quick names, and you tell me if you like them. We'll just do kind of quick hit, yes or no. Do you like Percy Harvin this year?
No.
All right. Do you like Deshaun Jackson in Washington this year?
Double-digit touchdowns.
Interesting. What about Mike Wallace in Miami? He's kind of gone, disappeared. He's on an island out there.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with his ADPs at right now either. I'm on Mike Wallace.
All right. What about Decker with the Jets?
Want to get a ton of targets, couldn't get a ton of receptions.
Okay. Who's going to wind up being the quarterback there?
Gino.
Yeah, it's going to be Gino? Okay. Real quick, Golden Tate in Detroit. A lot of people think a lot of big things for him. Is that going to happen?
Haven't drafted him anywhere yet, but I can see it playing that offense on the other side of Larry Fitzgerald.
Okay. And one last one. And this guy was one of my favorite players last year. I think he's going to be a star, but he's got Ryan Fitzpatrick throwing to him. DeAndre Hopkins, once AJ's gone, which is going to be sooner rather than later, does he have a chance to be a top 5, top 10 receiver? Because skill-wise, when I watch him, I think he could be. What do you think?
The skill is there. I don't know if he's there mentally yet. A lot of talent, but I don't know if he's ready to be a professional football player.
All right, there you go. Top quality analysis. Corey Parson, morning show producer on Sirius XM Fantasy, of course, with Roto Experts. This is Fantasy Sports Network. Oh, my gosh. This is Razzball Radio on the Fantasy Sports Network. I'll get through it. I'll make this happen. We'll be right back.
I was never one for traditional dating, which is why I like to meet guys on ArrangementFinders.com. Arrangement Finders puts a twist on dating that works so well, they guarantee you'll find a girl. That's right, guarantee. Sounds too good to be true? Check out these girls on ArrangementFinders.com who are looking to date. She's hot. She's hot. Okay, her, not so much. Anyway, it's free to join, so you've got nothing to lose. Go to Arrangement Finders and meet girls like me who know what you really want.
Welcome back to Razzball Radio on the Fantasy Sports Network. I am joined now by another Canadian, all the way from Vancouver, Sal Stefanile from xnsports.com. Sal, welcome to Razzball Radio on the Fantasy Sports Network.
Well, thanks for having me, Nick. How are you doing today?
Man, I'm great. And you know what? I'm actually really jacked up to talk about you because you specialize, listen, you know your fantasy football in general, but you specialize in 2-quarterback strategy, which a lot of leagues now are moving to QB as a flex option potentially, or even pure 2 QB leagues. And of course, quarterbacks are so important in fantasy already. Having a key guy is critical, but bringing in the second QB changes the dynamic. So give me a couple strategies that you use when it comes to 2-quarterback leagues.
Yeah, for me personally, it kind of depends on the league size. So if I'm in a 2-quarterback or a super flex league that's 10 teams or less, I tend to wait on the quarterback positions. So either I'll go studs and streaming, where I'll get like one top-ish quarterback, like maybe one of the top 12 fantasy quarterbacks, right, in the early rounds. So like say 1, 2, 3, those first 3 rounds, and then just wait a little bit to like fill out the rest of my roster, and then kind of hit that QB2 tier a little hard later on, so I can find a couple guys that I can play based on matchups every week. If it's like a really heavy 2-quarterback league, so like say 12 teams, passing touchdowns are worth 6 points, I've been known to go quarterback in a draft like that before. So it kind of all depends. Like if you're in a 2-quarterback league, you know your draft mates, you've been in there for a few years, right, you kind of tend to know the tendencies of it. So I mean, that's the great thing about 2-quarterback leagues is like there really is no one set strategy. So like we mentioned, studs, streaming, QB. I'm playing around with adapting the late round quarterback strategy into 2-quarterback leagues this year. I kind of dabbled a little bit with it last year, but I find that in 10-team leagues of where you're starting 2 quarterbacks at max, I think you could get away with it if you're comfortable enough during the draft itself. I mean, it's one thing to say to yourself, okay, I'm going to draft Carson Palmer, Jake Locker, Geno Smith. Those are going to be my quarterbacks for my 2-quarterback team. But once you get into the actual draft, like, it's, the pressure mounts. I'm like, right, do I really want those guys to be my quarterbacks all year long?
Well, so I can give you a great example of that, Sal. So right now we're drafting. It's a long draft. It's Ball Bloggers Legends League, Expert League, and I had the second pick in the first round. So I took Jamal Charles, which I was really happy with. Now this league has a QB flex. I haven't played a lot of 2 QB leagues, especially not in expert leagues. So what I did was in the second round, because already about 9 QBs had gone off the board, I didn't want to miss the boat. I took RG3 at 2.10. And then in the third round at 3.2, I took Colin Kaepernick. And the reason I did that was I feel fairly confident that between RG3 Kaepernick and Jamal Charles, that's at least a good foundation to build this team off of. I considered Romo over Kaepernick because of Dallas's defense. I think they're going to struggle this year. But how do you think I did? 12-team league, 4 points per touchdown pass, RG3 and Kaepernick in the second and third.
Yeah, I mean, like a nice thing about that is you mentioned it's 4 points per passing touchdown. And we've seen like the rushing quarterbacks in leagues like that get a little bit of boost because they get the 6 points for the rushing touchdowns. So between the two of them, you're going to have at least one starting quarterback every week. And the nice thing about it is a super flex league, which, I mean, you don't have to start 2 quarterbacks every week. For the most part, most super flex leagues tend to become a 2 QB league by default. But if it's like a full point PPR, then you can put in a receiver there or a pass catching running back. And I mean, I've seen a lot of 2 quarterback mocks this year where like people who are drafting early on will bypass the quarterback position and then go back to back with their second and third round pick. So if it's like 101, like, you got Charles, so like Charles or McCoy, and then they'll wait for the 2-3 turn to take their two quarterbacks. And what I've been finding this year is because of, like, we see quarterback position is so deep, you can wait and bypass the first round quarterback and take a couple guys like you mentioned, RG3 or Kaepernick, or whoever really you feel comfortable with. I mean, for myself personally, there's about like 16 quarterbacks I'd be okay with as my QB1. So if you can take that flexibility and use it to your advantage during the draft, you can let everybody else take those high-end quarterbacks while you kind of just like snipe the top receivers, running backs, and just fill out the rest of your team.
I just didn't feel confident enough in this expert league waiting on getting squashed down with quarterbacks. I even thought, and tell me if this is a good idea, I don't think that it is necessarily, but it did pop into my head. If there's let's say there's a top 15, 16 quarterback available to me in the fourth round now, is there any value in maybe grabbing another guy to have a little bit of a monopoly, maybe give me some trade chips going forward?
I mean, there's two sides to that coin. One, you already have RG3 and Kaepernick, so taking a third quarterback that you're going to start over those two guys on a majority of weeks is probably not going to be that high of a probability. So it's almost like you're kind of wasting that spot for the rest of your team, especially that early on, because you could get a starting receiver or a starting running back or starting tight end at that slot. But yeah, in two quarterback leagues, quarterbacks are king. And in trade talks, if you can find a quarterback needy team, whether that's because their second quarterback is injured or ineffective, you can kind of get a ransom for that player if you play your trade chips right. So it's kind of, you have to decide, do you want that value now or can you wait for it later on?
Okay, no, that's a fair point. Okay, we got a couple minutes left. I want to go through some real quick hits here. Couple of late round 2 QB league sleepers. I've been on the record. I like Sam Bradford and Carson Palmer as a second quarterback this league. Anyone else you could add to that mix?
Yeah, I mean, those are two great options. Based on the two quarterback ADP data that we have, if I'm looking at like late quarterback options, I'm targeting guys like Brian Hoyer. It seems like he's going to be starting week 1 most likely, but then you have to still worry about Johnny Manziel maybe after the bye week, so it's almost like you got to take two guys with that pick. But if you're not willing to do that, Jake Locker, Ryan Fitzpatrick, and Geno Smith are a few guys I'm targeting really, really late in two quarterback leagues.
You like Geno? Is it because his name's Geno?
Yeah, pretty much. That's how I base all my analysis on, is the names.
All right. He is Sal Stefanile from xnsports.com. His Twitter handle is 2QBFFB. 2QBFFB. This is a guy you want to talk to if you're in two quarterback leagues. Great guy for strategy. I've been following him on Twitter for a while. Good guy, knows his stuff. Really appreciate you joining us today, Sal. That's it for today's show. We will be back on Monday. We are doing, actually, over the weekend, the Razzball Radio Experts League. We got a great crew in that, and we are actually going to cover that on Monday's show, live from Seattle, or when we get up to Seattle. Of course, tour kicks off on Monday, August 4th in Seattle. You want to get on the tour anywhere, email me, nick@razzball.com. All the details at razzballtour.com. Sal, thanks again. Thanks to you guys. This is Razzball Radio on the Fantasy Sports Network. We'll see you on Monday.